Welcome to this episode of Bible Topics Discussion. We're happy you joined us today as we talk about the Sadducees.
You may remember that in a couple of our recent videos, we talked about the scribes and the Pharisees. Well, today we're going to talk about another group that was around during that same time, and that is the Sadducees. These three groups all existed before Jesus and also during the life of Jesus. And may I add, they were a thorn in his side, and he didn't mind saying so.
Let's very briefly remind ourselves who the scribes and Pharisees were. The scribes were educated men who were responsible for copying and preserving sacred text. They were experts in the law of Moses and became influential in Jewish society and eventually became religious leaders who interpreted the scriptures and taught the law to the people.
The Pharisees were a Jewish religious group that showed up around 160 BC and were very strict about sticking to the law and oral traditions. They were mostly well-respected middle-class businessmen and synagogue leaders, and were pretty keen on insisting that the people observe over 600 laws in the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible. Jesus didn't like the legalism of the scribes and the Pharisees and called them out on it publicly.
The Sadducees during the time of Jesus Christ and the New Testament times were a very powerful group among the Jews in Israel. They confronted Jesus and tried to trip him up, like in Matthew chapter 16, verse 1, which says, "The Pharisees and Sadducees came to Jesus and tested him by asking him to show them a sign from heaven. He replied, 'When evening comes, you say it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, today it will be stormy, for the sky is red and overcast. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. A wicked and adulterous generation looks for a sign, but none will be given it except the sign of Jonah.' Jesus then left them and went away."
In Acts chapter 4, verses 1 through 4, it says, "The priests and the captain of the temple guard and the Sadducees came up to Peter and John while they were speaking to the people. They were greatly disturbed because the apostles were teaching the people, proclaiming in Jesus the resurrection of the dead." Matthew chapter 22, verse 23 shows that the Sadducees didn't believe in a resurrection. It says this, "That same day the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came to him with a question."
The Sanhedrin was a Jewish type of council where you could get into a lot of trouble if you caused an uproar among the Jews. As you can imagine, the Apostle Paul didn't escape a brush with them. In a scripture where Paul is called before the Sanhedrin, he had this to say in Acts chapter 23, verses 6 through 8. "Then Paul, knowing that some of them were Sadducees and the others Pharisees, called out in the Sanhedrin, 'My brothers, I am a Pharisee, descended from Pharisees. I stand on trial because of the hope of the resurrection of the dead.' When he said this, a dispute broke out between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. The Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, and that there are neither angels nor spirits, but the Pharisees believe all these things."
Well, you can imagine what happened then. Let's look at the next verses, Acts chapter 23, verses 9 and 10, and see. "There was a great uproar, and some of the teachers of the law who were Pharisees stood up and argued vigorously. 'We find nothing wrong with this man,' they said. 'What if a spirit or an angel has spoken to him?' The dispute became so violent that the commander was afraid Paul would be torn to pieces by them. He ordered the troops to go down and take him away from them by force and bring him into the barracks. It sort of looks like Paul pitted the Pharisees and the Sadducees against each other there to cause a bit of confusion. I don't know, I wasn't there, but I've always thought that it looked like Paul caused them to be more upset with each other than they were with him. At any rate, we thought you would be interested to know about the Sadducees.
Well, that's it for this week. Please like, comment, and share, and let us know if there are questions or suggestions for future videos. We'd love to hear from you. Do you think there are any people who now would qualify as Sadducees? See you next week. Be blessed.